Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the RISMedia agent webinar, broker webinar. We're excited to talk about tech today, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. We've got some amazing guests and panelists, but before I introduce them, I always want to just show a little bit of gratitude to the people who make these events possible. And today's event is sponsored by BoomTown, and we have we call him an OG boomer, an original boomer. Matt Kill with us, who has been with BoomTown for almost 8 years, which is about as long as I've known BoomTown. And he served in a variety of different roles. He joined the company all the way back in 2012 as a support specialist, where he helped clients with all their technical questions. And after a period of time, he just continued to show his value and elevate. And he just identified an opportunity for even creating better training and working on the client experience and helping other people have a great experience with BoomTown. And they've developed some just tremendous tools and resources and systems. And I'm a big fan of BoomTown. Mac, thanks for being part of the webinar today. We appreciate you being here.
Verl, happy to be part of this esteemed group of professionals here. I don't know how I got in here, but I'm happy to be part of it, and I appreciate the warm introduction. And quick story, funny story, y'all. The hiring manager when I started back in 2012 was none other than this guy Rivers Pierce right here. So it's always good to be able to catch up with him. You know, he's been a mentor and a big part of my professional life. So glad to see you here, Rivers.
Thank you, Matt.
That's really cool. Well, Matt, as we jump in, by the way, I'm Verl Workman, CEO of Workman Success Systems, and I'll be the moderator today. We specialize in coaching and developing seven-figure teams, as well as working with brokers and owners on creating successful team concepts within their brokers and brands. And so because of what we do, we have a lot of interaction with the BoomTown family and others like them, including RISMedia. I'll also tell you that at the end of the webinar today, you're going to want some really cool stuff that we're going to give away. Just take a picture of this slide real quick, because this is how you're going to get a download of the tools and also some of the and some of the things we talk about, a copy of the presentation. But I'm going to ask you to make sure you stay on till the very end, and we'll put that slide back up again. You'll get all that information. So if you have any difficulties or you have any questions, just you go into the chat box and say, and write your questions in there, and somebody from RISMedia will be there to moderate and answer your questions or help you with any technical difficulties you're having. I also want to encourage you to be interactive. We have guests on here today that are just open books, and one of the cool things in our pre-webinar conversations is how open they are to just having conversations about what's working and what's not working and things we can do better. So I'm going to encourage you all to just go in and use the question box. Just so I know how you know how to use it, everybody go in there and tell me hello and where you're from. And that way I can see who's on the call today, and I can see where you're from, and that you know how to use the questions. I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm on the questions box right now, so say hello real quick. Now I can see that, you know, we've got a bunch of people here, Deborah and Jacqueline and Jane and Karen. Go in there and just tell me hello and where you're from. That way we're able to see you, and I know that you can ask questions when we get to it. If you don't mind, Matt, would you mind just jumping in and giving us a little bit of what's going on at BoomTown? Tell us what's happening in the world of BoomTown. You guys are always coming up with cool new things.
Yeah, we're hard at work here, Verl. A lot of good stuff going on, and again, just happy to be involved here. Thanks to RISMedia for having us as a sponsor, and you, Verl, for our relationship. We value that greatly. But whenever I talk about BoomTown, I like to kick off with just a simple statement that we exist to make agents more successful, not necessarily investors or anything like that. Our primary focus is arming agents with the tools that they need to compete and succeed in an ever-changing real estate landscape. And you know, today's session is all about you know, being cost conscious and making sure that you're not wasting money and saving on tech expenses. And Verl, if you wouldn't mind sliding to the next slide, one of the things I like to highlight when we talk about making sure you're not wasting money is focus on adoption, right? And one thing that we like to highlight when we're speaking to people about BoomTown is when you compare us up to a lot of the other industry leaders, one thing that we really stand out on is ease of use, and this is according to G2. If you're not familiar, it's a tool that allows you to compare softwares to other solutions, and ease of use is a huge indicator for us that we're pushing on the right buttons to make sure our clients have the tools they need to learn how to use BoomTown at a high level. One of the ways we do that, and kind of jumping to the next slide.
That's a great slide, by the way. I love that slide.
So yeah, a lot of great insights. G2 for anything outside of real estate, otherwise a great website to review potential solutions for your business. But how we do that and help drive adoption adoption with our clients. We provide a lot of great reports and insights into behaviors of agents and consumers. This slide specifically is a showcase of our vitals dashboard. So clients like Brandon can take a look at his team's structure and performance and know where he can improve, where agents can make some tweaks and adjustments to get more out of that. And then once you start to adopt it at a high level, then you start to really see efficiency gains. So moving on to the next slide, the world-class CRM, the automation that you get through BoomTown allows you to focus on things like going to appointments and winning listings. So you start to see efficiency gains as you get adoption. And that's one thing we see in common. At high levels of adoption, people succeed with BoomTown. And ultimately, if you want to not waste your money, you need to be adopting the platform. And our team of experts here helps you all see adoption through our training team, our success managers, our support team. So if you want to learn more, go check out boomtownroi.com/product-tour. We'd love to have an opportunity to chat with you. But otherwise, I'm most excited to learn from you three this afternoon. Thank you for letting me blabber on for a little bit, Viral. Can't wait to get involved in the conversation with y'all.
Well, we appreciate BoomTown and all they do for so many people in the industry. There's so many agents, team leaders, and brokers that have launched their careers as a result of the resources that BoomTown provides. So thanks for what you do for the industry, and we really do appreciate it. We have two great guests today. We have Brandon Binningham, CEO of Maryland Delaware Group Long and Foster Real Estate. He's got a great team there, and Rivers Pierce, the co-founder and CEO of Weightless with an 8. Now, like, that's one thing I've never been, Rivers, is weightless, but I like the concept. We can have all kinds of fun talking about that. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Rivers first, and we're going to get into a little bit about Weightless and what they do. We're going to talk about technology. Rivers is the co-founder of Weightless with nearly 2 decades of experience, and he and I have had lots of interactions over the years. And what I can tell you as an industry executive or professional, he always brings a level of charismatic leadership into any role he's ever had. And one of the things I've noticed is he's interacted with our people at Workman Success Systems is that he always leaves them feeling like they can do more and that there's greater potential than what they had coming into it. And I've always appreciated that, Rivers, with what you've done in our interactions over our years together in this space. So just know that I have a lot of respect for you. He's worked with a lot of Fortune 500 level brands in e-commerce, online marketing, has tremendous experience in real estate and property, technology industries. He's a tech guy, sure, from the beginning to end. He works with tech companies who are interested in entering the real estate vertical and then helping them figure out how to position within that space so they have the right marketing, the right partnerships, what events to do, what events not to do, and create great experiences for these people coming in. It was really interesting to see there's whoops, I hit the wrong button there. There's a lot of people that come into this space that don't know what to do, and it's good to have an expert that will help them navigate that process. So Rivers, thanks for joining with me. And I love this concept. What the heck is dark tech?
Well, Viral, first and foremost, thank you for the kind words. Great to see you and Brandon and Mac as well. Let's jump right in. Look, dark tech, man. I know that you guys have probably seen this a lot, but it's pretty straightforward. It's all the technology that you are paying for and not using. Right? And it's like, it's one of those things with dark tech where it may not be that you're, quote, not using it. Certainly there are. And the easiest way to go about it is, look at your Amex, look at your credit card statements. Like, what are you paying for? Put it into a spreadsheet. I've even got one I could share later if you want, but basically it just helps you like break it down. What does it do? What category does it fall in? What should it be doing? What are the contract terms for it? How much does it cost? And most importantly, as Mac touched on, what's the adoption rate across the org, right? Across the team? Like, are people actually using it? And if not, why the hell are you paying for it still, right? And we go in and we do audits for customers all the time, and we're like, well, what about this thing over here? Like, well, Johnny got that 3 years ago and he doesn't even work here anymore. I was like, well, you've been paying for, even if it's $19.99 a month, it adds up, right? I think also, though, on top of that, when you've got a system like a BoomTown or the bigger systems that are more expensive, they may not be dark tech in that people are not just using them outright, but if they're not being adopted fully, it's not going to do what it needs to, you're not getting your ROI out of it. So the very least, trim the fat, get rid of the things you're not using. And if that leaves a gap, then figure out either why they weren't using that product or find something to fill that gap. It's really straightforward, but it's the easiest way to shave some dollars off, create some immediate efficiency.
You know, it's funny, as a company, we just went through this process, and it usually happens when you have turnover in key positions. So you have somebody running your database, and then they leave, and they used and they bought all these things that they wanted, but the new person comes in and they want a different set, and they continue paying for the other. We probably found, you know, $3,000 or $4,000 a month worth of subscription tech that we weren't utilizing, or we found 2 systems that did the same thing.
Exactly. It's not just dark, it's redundant things. If you're using 2 CRMs, you're using multiple things. If there's a reason, great. If not, that's not efficient.
So was that your goal, to make me have pain? Is that because it's working?
A little pain never hurts, man.
Now this is a myth. Like, everybody says all your technology should work together. I keep hoping to find that solution. Tell me more what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is kind of in the day and age that we live in. You know, think 10, 12 years ago, you had these kind of the real estate tech system, the tech world was not as advanced as it is now. So you could kind of do most of what you need to do with 1 or 2 systems, 1 or 2 platforms. In this day and age, with everything from the specialization across a team, for example, from lead gen, ISA, you know, lead nurture, all the various people that are doing things in that nurture, and then the contract to close phase, you've got point solutions all the way through there, right? So BoomTown does a lot of great stuff, but it doesn't do everything, right? No one system can really do it all anymore. But in what you see a lot is people that are doing a lot of manual processes, right? In this day and age, in the world of APIs where things can talk to each other, they should talk to each other, right? So it should be working together as one unified system. That takes a little bit of expertise, someone like myself, but like, you know, Brandon does a lot of this. They've probably got 20 different tech products that they use across their org and across the businesses. The more that you can get it actually communicating with each other, the better it's going to be from an efficiency standpoint, and you're not going to lose things as it goes through the pipeline.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes total sense to me. And I am seeing a lot more integration. Like, there's companies that are figuring out how to talk to each other and create the source to communicate.
Absolutely.
Well, what should you automate?
Yeah, so this is just kind of piggybacking off of that, right? It's like understanding that you, as the technology provider, you know, you stay in your lane. You do a couple of things really, really, really well, and then you integrate into the various pieces. So your transaction management needs to talk to your CRM. Your lead gen pieces need to be funneling directly into the CRM. CRM needs to be sending out emails and texts and those kinds of things on your behalf. And then you've got the data underneath all of it. So again, kind of building off the last slide, you got all the pipes connected together so everything can flow where it needs to go. That's just the beginning. It's like, okay, well, what are we now doing that is going to work while we sleep? What's going to create leverage for us, right? So that, you know, we can actually communicate to 10,000 people at one time, right? So it's like when that lead comes in the door, it needs to talk to your CRM, and then it creates what's called a trigger event that triggers something else that automates steps 1, 2, and 3, right? So before the ISA can even get on the phone, a notification's already gone out to the email, a text message has already been sent to the lead, right? And then, you know, as you work your way through, it's like, especially in that contract to close phase, what can you automate during that, right? How can you ensure that notifications are going out, that people are alerted of what they need to be doing, that tasks are going out to various team members, that consumers are getting updates and automation around where things are, you know, giving them some peace of mind. Gone are the days where you can keep up with the volume of leads in the database manually, right? So you've got the tools. If you're using something like BoomTown, if you're using some of the ISA and chat software out there, you should absolutely be automating some of those, even like AI-powered conversations. But then underneath the hood, from an operational perspective for your team, what are the things that are kind of like the dominoes? When this one falls, these kinds of things that are happening downstream that are keeping the team working. Either it's doing it on your behalf, or at the very least, giving them prompts to be doing something, you know, on top of that or with that. I'm kind of curious, kind of Brandon's thoughts on some of this too, because I know they run a really tight ship, and it's just like any sort of machine. Like, the machine's got to be doing a lot of it for you to create that next level of leverage.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've automated, you know, everything. Obviously, we're BoomTown users. I think I was a BoomTown user before Mac even worked there, It's been
I
that
think
long.
so too.
9.5 years. I'll check. I'll look into that.
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah, it's somewhere around that time. And I think the great thing has been that we've been able to automate so many things around the system. And I think the biggest thing that agents don't really get or understand sometimes is that 75% of the leads that you get today are not going to do anything in the next 90 days. And the 5% that are probably going to multiple websites. They're probably on multiple home searches. And the gold is in the leads that are in nurture and watch that, we use BoomTown. That's the lingo we use. And I think agents get caught up in the shiny object of, I got to chase the one that I can go get today. And what we've really found and done a really good job at is really being able to figure out the BoomTown system using the things like the vitals, and really having an understanding of how all that looks, and really trying to just grow our monthly active users that we had on the site. Because once I figured out if I had a certain amount of monthly active users, I could actually predict how many transactions were going to come out of that. I think there's a lot of people in our industry who don't understand that. This is something that I learned from BoomTown. 2 years ago, I was in Charleston and we were going through my entire database with them. And they said, if you do these kind of steps, your monthly active users is going to get here. And 2 years from now, you guys are probably going to do about 800 transactions. And last year we did 800 transactions. So, just really understanding how all that plays together and understanding that like your database is like a living, breathing thing that can generate you income for a long time, and understanding that if you run it the right way and you just don't look at it as I'm going to jump in and try to just work with leads today, really understanding. And then the automation piece, which Rivers is talking about, I'm still in production, but also I sit at a higher level and oversee 30 plus agents. And agents are going to chase the shiny object every day. That's what it really amounts to. So with BoomTown, one of the things that's really helped us is having all the automation around everything, where you can send out automated text, you can send out automated emails, and we essentially can figure out a system for when a lead comes in that if they're not ready to buy today, that they stay and they're giving us permission to market to them. It's kind of crazy now that we are closing sales in BoomTown that are 4 and 5 years old, and that have been on email drips and have been on alerts and have been getting emails from us for 4 and 5 years. And you have to have that automation, because if not, no agent's going to call the 150 people that are in their whatever database they're using a day. It's just not, for the most part, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, what's funny is a lot of people don't stay with the platform long enough to really get the value out of those, the B and the C leads. They jump in 6 months, they haven't closed anything. They're like, the world's falling down, and they go out and chase another shiny object. I love that you pointed that out. And I found that the magic is consistency. And Rivers, you say leverage the tools you always have. I lead with revenue, not with expense, right? So stop buying and start using what you already have. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely, 100%. I did something right before the pandemic. I did a thing with an MLS, a presentation, and I was like, so what do you guys offer your agents? And as part of being in the association, the MLS and everything, it was like 40 different products that they had access to. And these people are always complaining, I don't know what to use. I don't have access to anything. I got to pay for all this stuff. I'm like, here's 40 things right here. Are you using any of these? Right? It's like, as a team leader, like Brandon offers a ton of stuff to his team. That's what teams do. They give you BoomTown, they give you transaction software, they give you an ISA, they give you these things, like, use them, right? So don't let it become something where you're always complaining, right? It's like, you probably have everything you need as a younger agent, especially those younger rookie kind of agents coming into a team environment. Use the things that you're already either paying for through your association and dues and those kinds of things, or that you're paying for as part of your splits or being a part of the brokerage or team that you're on. Quit trying to look elsewhere. They're there for a reason, And so it's like, that's the thing that bothers me the most when people complain about having to spend all this money on stuff. Like, until you get to the point where you're running your own thing, you probably got everything you need that's already being paid for, either for you on your behalf so you can be more productive for the overall organization, or you're already paying for it as a part of what you pay for in the work that you do and the transactions that you close. So it's really straightforward, in my opinion.
So do you have a process that you go through when evaluating a tool stack? Like, is there a duplicate? Do I have more than one? Are
Yeah.
we using it at 50%? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down first and foremost to me is, are there dupes, right? And if there are, why, right? Because some people will use like BoomTown has great email marketing for sure, but it's really good at like marketing for like listing alerts and sales oriented things, right? So if I see somebody with like a CRM, like a BoomTown or something like that, but then they've also got like MailChimp or Constant Contact or maybe another just email system, a lot of times that's okay because they're sending like pure marketing stuff out of that system. And the last thing you want is somebody opting out of your email, like your listing alerts, right? So sometimes that kind of redundancy is okay. But it's when you see like multiple CRMs on the same team or something. Why are we doing that? So duplication, redundancy for sure. The next level down for me is always, it comes purely to adoption. Are you using it, right? Are you seeing value in this thing? Are people actually getting something out of it? Can you trace it back to a tangible ROI or some sort of benefit? And if not, it should be cut loose. And that may not be, it may not necessarily be because the product is not a good fit for the team, or it may be something subjective. You never know. Like, but pretty much what I've seen is most products in our space, they work if you work them. It was trite as that sounds, just use it, right? So that's my 2 cents.
I was laughing when you said that because we use a simple process. We started with, has anyone been in it in the last 12 months?
Exactly.
Nobody can come show us they've actually been in it. We probably don't need it. And the other one is when it's on the credit card statement, someone's got to audit those, right? And actually look at what you're paying for. And then when you look at something, if you don't know what it is and nobody can find the login and password to get into it, probably not something you need.
Probably a problem. I'll tell you something else that we used to do back in the day at BoomTown is people would just a team leader would turn a certain agent's leads off, right? And just wait for that person to get back to them, right? And so it's like, I haven't had a lead in 2 weeks. Oh, you just now realize that? We need to talk, right? So
yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to Brandon a little bit as we get into some of that stuff. Yeah, Mac.
Bro, how often, you coach so many real estate professionals across the country. How often do you actually see people that have softwares in their tech stack that they haven't logged into in 12 months? That seems mind-boggling to me. I'm like, 12 months?
All the time.
Years, all the time?
All the time. Yeah, we do a thing called an AMP scorecard where when somebody comes into coaching, we go and we look at all of their systems. So we look at all their technology, their accounting software, their web stuff, and we score it. And oftentimes you'll find that they own it, but they score 0 on it because no one's logging in and using it. And that happens all the time. Or they've purchased something because they saw it at a webinar or they saw it at a convention and they didn't tell anybody on their team they bought it. They just got the show special. And so they have it. They know they have every intention of using it, but they don't have an empowered champion that can get into the technology and actually use it. So we start with just doing an analysis, breaking it down like River says, ask the questions, and then you just test. I test everything. See if that dog hunts. If the dog doesn't hunt, then let's send it to somebody else's farm.
You've been spending time down here in South Carolina without saying, bro?
I get all my best quotes from my Southerners. I love my Southern friends. All right, so Rivers, how do you kind of stay cutting edge with what's coming new as you work with new companies coming into the space? How does an agent stay on the cutting edge without being on the bleeding edge?
Yeah, good point. For me, it's my job to be on the bleeding edge, right? But I think it's very simple, keeping up with RISMedia, Inman News, the Realtor Mag, those kinds of things, obviously. I think it's also interesting, like, to follow the various accelerator programs out there, like the NAR Reach program, where they're bringing people in, the like Modern Ventures or Metaprop, like Fifth Wall. They have, these people are actively VCs and financing up and coming or mid-level kind of property tech related companies. It takes a little bit of effort, but I'd say don't get too down. Like most agents don't need to be on, like you said, on the bleeding edge or even the front edge. Like, look around at what the successful people around you are using and do that first. Right? That's about as straightforward as it gets, right? You don't have to be using some brand new thing, especially if you're not doing the real kind of base 101 things already, like 100%.
I think something Brandon said to me, that said to us a few minutes ago about understanding the active users was the thing we track. To me, that's brilliant. Most people track GCI, and that's already happened. Yeah. There's nothing in that is going to help you get to your goals today. But if you understand that your focus is to create more engagement or people that are using your site, and then that's going to create the conversations that are held and the appointments that are set. You know, when you figure out that one most important thing that drives your business, that drives everything. So I love this talk track of staying current with technology, understanding what's going on there, getting rid of your dark tech as a review, and then making sure that you pay attention to what's going on in the marketplace and remove the duplication. So Rivers, I appreciate your thoughts. Will you stay on with us for just a minute as we introduce Brandon and talk a little bit about some of the things he's doing?
Absolutely. I'm in for the long haul, my man.
All right, I love it. So Brandon, welcome to the call. I appreciate you jumping right in. So everybody knows Brandon is a realtor first and foremost, but he's the CEO and the team leader at the Maryland and Delaware group of Long & Foster Real Estate. He's based in Salisbury, Maryland. He and his real estate team is one of the best in the business and in the country. They're ranked #1 in the entirety of all of Long & Foster for homes sold. Benningham started as a solo agent in 2007, so he hasn't been doing it that long. And right away, he made himself committed to being the best in every aspect of the business. And I think that's one of the things that separates the average from the exceptional, is the exceptional just create better client experiences. They just are better at the business and they focus on being great. So Brandon, I love that that's who you are. He also worked in an incredibly short period span time on creating amazing client experiences and really, upping the game. Consumers today feel like realtors aren't worth the money they get paid, but it's agents and team leaders like Brandon that are out to individually change the perception of the value of the agent in the eyes of the consumer by creating better client experiences. And he rose to become a top seller in the Eastern Shore Peninsula, a popular real estate region spanning 3 states. So he has to be licensed in Maryland and Delaware and Virginia. And so there's a lot of heavy lifting going on in your life, Brandon. Thanks for being here with us today. And I love that you're selling 800 houses, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Last year, by Real Trends, we were #1 in the state of Maryland because that's where we're headquartered, and we were actually #5 in the country for homes sold for a team. So it's been a pretty good last 16, 18 months.
So hey, now this isn't any part of any pre-question, but did you start off wanting to build a mega team that did 800 houses? Was that how you started? Like, let's go?
No, so I actually didn't ever really want to become an agent. I bought a couple of pieces of property as investment properties, and honestly, I just didn't have the best experience. And I was coming from owning a business that was very customer service centric. And I worked with the quote unquote top producers in my market and just didn't have a great experience. And I said, well, if that's the experience that people get, I think I could be an agent and do better. And then, I think like my 3rd year in real estate, I sold 150 or 200 houses, somewhere between there, as a single agent. And I was like, man, there's, I could teach this to other people and I could show other people how to do this. And, kind of the training when I got my license, it was kind of like they walked around the office and said, good luck, kid. So there wasn't a ton of training that was out there. And, I kind of thought, man, if you come in as a brand new agent, it's really hard to build a really viable business. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall that the consumer was going to demand more and more from you as an agent. It was going to be impossible to do everything on your own. But if you could build a team of people that are trained on doing it on what I think is the right way and are consumer centric and consumer focused, then you have something that's pretty cool. And that's kind of the direction I went in.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're with Long & Foster. I've known Long & Foster for as long as I've been in the space. And they're one of the few companies that really got ahead of the whole team concept and created an environment that allowed you to build whatever kind of business you wanted to. And so, I recognize the brand, and they're being innovative and willing to change and adapt to the team culture. And they've created an environment that's allowed you to really grow.
Yeah, the cool thing about Law & Foster is we were the first ones to be like a mega team in multiple offices. And what was neat about that was they were kind of like, Brandon, we don't have the blueprint, but you're going to be the guinea pig to try it. So what's been kind of cool is they've kind of adapted from what we both learned, and now we've got teams everywhere in Long & Foster. So it's been awesome that they embraced it early.
So let's just kind of get into it and talk about some of the things that you do and do as a team to generate success.
So I think one of the big things here, this is one thing that I think as a whole, I mean, gosh, I don't know. I can tell you conversations that Rivers and Mac and I have had, probably over a few old fashions going years and years back, about speed to lead and agents and teams not understanding this. And so the thing is, from those conversations to now, things have really changed of what the expectation is from a consumer. I mean, what you have to think about is if you fly, right? We probably all travel now that, we're not locked down from COVID anymore. But you fly to a different city and you get out at the airport and you put your phone out and you press the button for Uber. And if it's not to you in 4 or 5 minutes, you're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? How's an Uber ride going to take longer than 5 minutes? And then also like Amazon, press the button, it gets here tomorrow, the next day. The consumer now has that mindset of my expectation is that someone is going to respond to me and help me right away. So what people don't understand is if you don't have some type of system to speed to lead, you're wasting money on leads, frankly. And so from a tech standpoint, there's a lot of things that we've done. Obviously, BoomTown has been a huge help for us because it is so important to master that speed to lead. Because if not, I mean, it's crazy that what a consumer expects, but that's what they expect. And if you don't get to consumer fast enough, they're just not going to do business with you. And, you're literally throwing money out the window buying leads if you don't have a system and an automation and a tech to get to them fast. That's a really, really important concept that I think a lot of our industry doesn't get or embrace.
So Brandon, let's define fast. I did a survey of a client in Atlanta who said that their conversion rate was a problem because of the platform they were using. And so we went in and we had a bunch of mystery shoppers go and look at the website, and the average response time was 24 hours, and only 50% of leads even got responded to at all. So when you say speed to lead, are you thinking 23 hours? I mean, what does that mean to you?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, that's right?
Yep.
Like we got to define it. Speed is now.
Yeah, and 5 minutes to me is long, honestly. I mean, it's you have to have some type of automation, a text, an email, something goes out to them, then someone's getting on the phone with them or communicating with them within the first 5 minutes.
You and I are aligned in this. The concept is people, especially real estate agents, are quick to make financial investments in tech. They make money investment, but they don't make the second investment. Talk to me about those two investments.
So I think the thing is that, right, you're buying and leveraging tech to buy some of your time back, right? And the most valuable commodity we all have is time. And if you buy tech and you don't leverage the automation, and you don't understand that, and you don't understand the automation around your business. So here's the thing. I think one of the things that Rivers mentioned is, these agents can't keep up with all the things that they have to do. If you don't automate everything that you do and you don't have like ruthless consistency and boundaries around your business, you don't really have a business. You're kind of an order taker. And if you think of any profession, if you go to the doctor, look at the regimented process that you have to go through before you see the doctor. And, in our business, a lot of agents don't understand that whole side of you're running a business. And I used to be a coach with BoomTown, and I would go into the back end of people's BoomTown, and it was an absolute mess. And they'd have no automation, they'd have no anything. And they're like, oh man, I'm losing money, blah, blah, blah. But you've never actually spent time on, really turning this into a system that can generate you a ton of business. and the little bit of time investment you make on the front end is going to pay you dividends. And then as you start to grow, you have to really understand that, again, your CRM, your database is a living, breathing thing. It's part of your business. If you're not consistently investing time into it to make it better, then really you're losing both time and money because you're always playing catch up and you're just having so many holes in your system that, a lot of times, to your point, you like what you said earlier, we relook at things when somebody leaves. An agent's business, when something goes wrong, or they're like, oh my God, the market's up 20%, we're only up 8%. And then they start looking at all the holes. Then they're in a scramble of how do we fix it all, when there's so much out there that can make it really, really easy. I mean, sales is easy if you don't overcomplicate it. And running a business by no means is easy, but it's a lot easier if you run it like a business and you automate everything and you take the time to really build in SOPs and build in processes and duplicate that. Think about any good hotel you've ever stayed at, high-end restaurant chains. You can go into a different city and have a similar experience. That's what you have to build on your team, that your agents provide the same similar experience to the consumer, but also that the agents duplicate the same similar experience of how they run their business as you want as a team lead.
So I just want to, there's a lot to unpack. You say a lot of things there, Brandon, but a couple of things that I want everybody to take away from this. And one is that if you're going to make the first investment, which is the financial investment in your tech, then it is crazy, or you'll never get a return on that first investment unless you make the second investment, and that's the time to do it right and set up the SOPs, or the standing operating procedures of how we're going to use it, and then make course corrections along the way. When what you're doing isn't working, you change it till you figure it out.
And a good point on that, Verl, is the SOPs and the process are going to buy you a ton of time back, because there's no way that, I think our database is like 70, 80,000 people now, because we've been with BoomTown for so long. There's no way that my team of agents can contact 70, 80,000 people. And, there's no way that we close a 5-year-old BoomTown lead either if we don't have SOPs of how those leads are communicated with. But that's all through automation.
So I jump in real quick, Earl?
Sure.
Yeah, we have something that we came up with at Weightless that we call your SAT score, something that people would remember. And it's the same thing he's basically saying: systems, accountability, and technology. You can't do it without all three, right? The system, great systems and great tech don't do anything if you're not accountable to it, right? Great systems and accountability you can't leverage it without the tech, right? And you can show up every day with great tech, but if you don't have a system, it falls apart, right? You always hit a ceiling there. It's a mix of, I think, all of those together. It's critical. If you don't have that blueprint in place and then you're accountable to it, like, the tech just feeds off the blueprint that you give it, right? That's it.
So I like that. So Brandon, when you have 70 or 80,000 people, or even 5,000, like when you have more than an individual can follow up with, do you dedicate somebody on the team whose job it is to run the platform, make sure the touches are happening to increase engagement?
Yeah, so we actually have a guy that is quote unquote our digital marketer, but his baby is BoomTown. And the cool thing that we do every week, and for everybody that's listening to this is every week, doesn't matter, every week. If you are on leads on our team, you have to come to the Thursday meeting. He pulls up their vitals, goes through every single person's account. This is what you're doing right. This is what you're doing wrong. He goes through everything. Then he sets tasks of what they're responsible for to fix in the back end of their BoomTown. If they don't do it by the next meeting, they're off leads until they fix it. To River's point, I was funny because there's been times when someone skips the meetings and they get taken off leads, and then it's like 3 weeks and they're like, hey man, I haven't gotten any leads. And I'm like, yeah, you haven't gotten leads in 3 weeks. So it's so, yeah, they didn't even know. So it's so important to me. And here's what I'll tell you, another huge example. When there's been times that we've fired agents because they didn't fit our culture from a performance standpoint, when we emptied their BoomTown out, almost every single time in the next 30 days, somewhere between 8 and 9 transactions, the team closed off their BoomTown, right? Because they weren't working it, they weren't following our performance standards. So it's something, if you don't measure it, it doesn't get better. And if you don't measure it, you can't make accurate decisions. So we, every Thursday, have somebody that's training the agents that they're going through it. And we power BoomTown is like what we power so many things in our business from. So, if you're going to be on leads, you have to be in the meetings and you have to adhere to our performance standards, because if you don't, then you're just going to be off leads. And I will tell you that almost all of the BoomTown leads that my agents close, I'd say north of 80% are leads that are older than 90 days. So we have to have automation and SOPs around how they follow up with nurtures, how they follow up with watches, what their automation, are the people on a saved search? Are they on an automatic drip? So those are all things that we go through. And if any CRM that you use has things like this, but again, if you don't have automation around your older leads, again, you're throwing money away, because 75% of leads are going to close farther than 90 days out.
I love to say that there's no bad leads, just people who aren't ready yet. And so
100% agree with that.
what's your process to hang on to them? And I love that you're just talking about that. No one ever talks about, the 3 and 4 and 5-year-old leads. And I think that's where the gold is. When you're panning for gold, you go through a lot of water and a lot of crap before you can get any nuggets. And that's what farming is all about, right? That's mining for gold within your database. So I love the concept of long term.
I'll tell you, because I'm in sales and I'm still so competitive, anytime one of the agents gets close to beating me in production that month, one of the things I like to do is I will go to make like 300-400 calls in the trash leads just to see how many I can turn into an actual deal. So I'm 100% with you that a lead is a lead is a lead.
And the fact that we put them in a category called trash.
Right.
Exactly.
And when you call them, you say that, hey, I just found you in the trash leads, thought I'd reach out.
And I love going into our sales meetings on Tuesday and say, hey guys, I closed 4 leads that you said were trash.
Yeah, what a powerful example. So many leaders don't set the example by leading and by actually getting in the trenches and doing it. That's my favorite game. And I have a lot of respect for you for getting out there and doing that. So as we talked about automating long-term follow-up, you talked about the 70 and 75% a little bit earlier. That's kind of the concept here, is that the majority of the business is already in your database. It's not the stuff that's coming in this week.
Yeah, 100%. It's, a quick point on that. We as an industry go shiny object. We tend to go wider. All you got to go is deeper. Like, there's more transactions in your current way of doing business than you probably ever think is possible. But we want to go wider and buy something else. And it's just like, if you look at what you have in front of you and you simplify it and you go after that, I guarantee you there's a lot more transactions than you think.
So for those of you that are on the call that are listening in to Brandon and to Rivers and Mac, I hope that you recognize the value of the content and the information that's being shared with you. They're giving you real things that are actionable that you can do in your business today. If you have questions or you have thoughts or comments, go into the check questions box. Just write the questions. Hopefully we have a couple minutes towards the end that we can ask questions, and I encourage you to do that. I'm genuinely curious. So as I'm talking to Brandon, it's spurring lots of questions in my head. I'm writing them down as we go, Brandon. I appreciate you being so forthcoming. So you're a big BoomTown guy. Is that your only pillar of income, or what are some other things you do to generate?
So another big thing that we've done and implemented, and this was BoomTown introduced me to call action, which works really well with BoomTown, and that is all our signs, all our billboards, and we can get like super ninja with it and know where like a phone call is coming from. So like we do realtor.com as an example. Realtor.com is set up through our call action, and not to get like super complicated, but a realtor.com phone call comes in, it rings shotgun to my team. Whoever answers the phone, it gets dumped into their BoomTown, and then we know where it came from. We know who answered the call, and then that's just not a phone call that was just lost. And the call action numbers on all of our signs, which is kind of cool too, because while I'm sitting here with you guys on the webinar, if people call off my sign and I can't answer, call action is having a whole text communication, and then that's all dumped into our BoomTown. So that's another kind of stopgap that we implemented of, just the straight call-ins off of our signs, off of our billboards, our radio ads. How do we do better at capturing that? And then again, realtor.com as an example, speed to lead, it's impossible to just throw tons of leads at all of your agents. You have to provide a system. So with us, it goes shotgun, and the agents know it's a special branded number that says it's from realtor.com. And then the cool thing is on the back end, we actually can look at the data to see who answers the phone, how fast they answer the phone. So that's another thing that we've implemented too. And I will tell you, since we implemented call action, like over the last few years, on average, we've seen our GCI that we can tie it to go up between $70,000 and $80,000 of a month of calls that we weren't losing, or calls that we probably were losing in the past because somebody calls you, you're in an appointment, you miss it, you call them back, whatever the case is, or we weren't able to tie in from a phone call to close a transaction. So that was a really cool thing we were able to implement, and kudos to both companies. But BoomTown saw call action early and created an API so that they talk together and they work together. And the other crazy thing is the call action, it dumps it into BoomTown, like it dumps like the call in. So there's been times when I'm like, hey, why is this agent not converting? And I can go back and read what they were saying on the phone. And I was able to, we were able to do training around, hey, well, the reason why you didn't get anywhere with this prospect is because you said this, this, and this, which is, not going to lead to a sale. So that's another thing that we implemented that has really helped us. I mean, getting every lead that comes off of your sign and your billboard and radio or whatever else we do, it's been a game changer for us.
I'm going to piggyback off that if you don't mind, Verl. Brandon's 1000% correct. We do a lot of data and analytics audits with our customers. The number one thing they're missing is call tracking. So whether it's call action or like call rail or some of these other providers out there, call action is a little more sophisticated, and then it has like the automated kind of ISA stuff that it does as well. But it's like people are like, oh, well, my cost per lead's too high. My cost per lead's too high. You know why it's too high? Because you're only tracking your digital lead gen, right? You're doing all this advertising. You're doing radio, you're doing TV, you're doing print, you're doing word of mouth, you're doing events, you're doing PR, you're doing all the digital ads, of course. But all of those other things, all those phone numbers and all those calls coming in, the cost per lead typically goes down, like gets cut in half, is just by turning on the tracking. You didn't do anything different. All of a sudden, your whole business, the worldview of your business changes because your cost per lead goes from $25 to $10, and you did nothing other than just start paying attention to it. And he's spot on also, is a lot of these things will record the calls, and then they have like AI underneath that will listen for strategic keywords that your people are supposed to be saying. And if they're not following the scripts, right? They're going off script. So of course they're not closing deals. They're on the team for a reason. Like, he's 100% right. If nobody gets anything else out of this, track your calls. It's huge.
So Brandon, what do you say
about it?
Thanks, Rivers. Brandon, you have friends all over the country that are high performers that run teams. What do you say to the agents and the brokers that will say, yeah, I know that works in Maryland and all the areas you work, but in my market, realtor.com doesn't work, or I tried BoomTown and it doesn't work for me. What do you say to them?
Man. So a couple things. So number one, I'm in a small, not metropolitan area, and you got to think Maryland has cities like Baltimore, Montgomery County, huge markets, and we are number one in the state. So competing with markets that average sales price is way higher, there's way more people moving in and out. What I can tell you is, the group of people that I network with and mastermind with, and Rivers and Mac know a lot of them, we all run very similar businesses in very different markets. The core principles of how we run our businesses.
Yeah, what you're saying is it's not about the market.
100%.
Yeah. I like to say that the two things I hear from everybody is, our market's different and everybody wants to work with me. And those are both not true. Nobody really cares about us, and they really care about themselves. And if you run the system, you're going to generate leads. And I love your transparency and like talking about things that work and don't work. What do you track? You threw some numbers out. You were talking about conversion rates and percentages, and like, do you just look at your sales at the end of the year and say it's working or not working, or are there other metrics and things that you look at in the process?
We track and look at everything. I think I'm in the minority of, I actually have a CFO, and we model everything out and we look at everything. We look at customer acquisition costs, we look at conversion rates, we look at ROIs, we look at everything. And we look at in the future, and we run multiple models. I'll give you a prime example. One of the things we looked at this year was if we could get an extra 0.5% on a certain amount of deals from a listing standpoint, it was going to increase our GCI almost 3 million. And we're really close to hitting that. And think about that. That's a small incremental change. That's a 0.5% on a deal. And we were able to articulate in that in our market, hey, we're 3.5 on the listing side because we provide a much higher value. So we look at everything. And frankly, when we look at things that don't produce, we cut it. And if it doesn't make sense, we get rid of it. And I will tell you, my journey and having to mature to run a really good business, there were times in my business when I didn't look at any of it. And you can't run a business that way. You're just throwing money against the wall. You have to, as a leader, as a broker, as a team leader, as an agent, you have to make data-driven decisions. And the cool thing is, in the world we live in, you can get any type of tech out there that's going to tell you how to make data-driven decisions. But if you don't make data-driven decisions, you're taking shots in the dark, and you're not really making a good business. You're not really running a good business because you can't make accurate decisions. So that's one of the things that, we look at everything. And if you're running a P&L, or if you have a P&L, whatever business you're running, like, you can't be behind on your P&L. And that's when some of the coaching and consulting I've done for clients is like, they're 2 months behind on their P&L. They're not ahead of it. And I just don't know how you can make their accurate decisions like that. You need to track, know, and understand every single piece of detail about your business. If not, you're not running a business.
So what are the things you look at on it? Like, I'm just going to go back to your BoomTown platform for a minute, but what are some of the dashboards or the things that you look at that allow you to get, I don't know, I don't believe we usually have people problems. We just have process problems. And so if our people aren't performing and I get data that I can train or coach to those gaps, what are the things you like to look at? And then how do you train to those gaps and you identify them?
So biggest thing on leads is how many times has the lead been contacted, right? So there's all kinds of data on how many times someone has to be contacted until they turn into a sale. So we believe it's somewhere between 16 and 18. So if you have an agent who has 1 to 2 contacts on a bunch of leads and they're not converting, well, I can tell you without digging any further, that's the problem, right? We don't even need to look at anything else on their dashboard. So that's one thing. Monthly active users, which I said before, gives us some predictability on how many we're going to close. Then we look at on some of the older nurtures, when's the last time someone's been contacted. See, here's another thing that no one can figure out. And if anyone figures this out, they're going to be like ridiculously rich, right? None of us can figure out what is the moment, right? So when you're consistently have a process for touching leads, mom, moving out of town, or husband just got a raise, or wife's pregnant, or whatever the case is, and you've been in contact with them, and this has happened to us, right? Where you lapsed one metric and you called them and you're like, yeah, actually, I bought a house, over the weekend because, I just got a raise and I decided to move, and they've been in your system for 3.5 years. Man, that sucks, right? So the last time someone's been contacted, especially the older leads, having metrics around that, and then also categories of, are people in the right categories where they're supposed to be? And then also obviously speed to lead is one thing that we look at. That's a big one too. But the reason why nurtures and older leads are so important is because no one can figure out that magic moment. That magic moment could be literally any time. You could have talked to a lead 3 weeks ago and they said, I have no intention of buying anything. And then they go into work 3 weeks later and the boss says, man, you are freaking awesome. I'm giving you X amount of raise. And then they're like, I can afford the house I always wanted.
You know what, Brandon, you talked about that magic moment. I'm not sure we'll ever figure out what it is because they're generated by life events that occur.
Exactly.
Right? Somebody gets married, somebody gets divorced, somebody decides they're moving in, they have a family member coming over, somebody gets pregnant. I mean, there's so many life events that occur. I love that you said somebody gets a raise. Some of the recent ones we've seen is, I don't want to, I can work from my home now, and so I want to move out of the city and into the suburbs. Like, life events occur, we can't control them. But what I'm hearing from you, and this is resonating with me, is that we have to be at the front of their mind and not miss the cycle of follow-up. So when that life event occurs, they think of us first.
100%.
We can't. I don't think we make the life events. That would be odd.
Yeah, and so the thing is, if you know your monthly active users, and you know your numbers and you know your metrics, then you have predictability of, if I have this big of a database, then it should net me this amount of transactions a year. And if it doesn't, then that means you're doing something wrong. And then that's when you have to go back and reevaluate where your gaps are in your process.
Okay, so I agree with that. So I tell people that the way most people do Facebook is fake work. What are you doing that's making it work?
Man, Facebook is insane. I probably this year, depending on what settles, will do like 30 million in volume off of Facebook. It's insane. I mean, it's people's TV, it's people's news. What I've done is really dived into video and just dropping a substantial amount of content on Facebook. The other thing too is, here's what we get wrong as an industry is that I think. I just sold someone's house in one day. I'm so great. I'm this, I'm that. And you never tell the story of the client. And what I found is, what I leverage Facebook for is, if you're a good agent, there's so many problems that we have to solve. I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier about why tech can never replace an agent, because there's so many things that go wrong in a transaction that we have to solve, that only we can solve in a moment's notice of critical thinking, right? And so, like, when I go on Facebook and when I market, yeah, we will do some, hey, we're number one in the state, we did all these kinds of things, because you have to establish some type of brand. But a lot of times I'm really just telling the story of, this person called me, all these things went wrong, this is how we fixed it, and now they're so excited, and this is the end result. Because the thing is, right now, real estate is the sea of sameness. Everybody's saying the same thing. The market's great. We sold someone's house in one day, but no one's really telling that story. And we all relate to stories, and we all communicate better through stories. And if you want to build a brand and you want to resonate on social media, you have to get to know, like, and trust with people. And know, like, and trust is not, I sold someone's house in one day. It is, no, tell the problems that you solved and how you help the customer and how you help the client, and put that type of content out there, and do that in long story form, and do that in videos, and it will become a lead magnet.
Brandon, I love the transparency and the thought process that you go into talking about the problems. Nobody wants to talk about the problems they had, but I think that's what separates us, is we all have problems. It's just that we're able to solve them, and the client walks away with a great experience at the end of the day, and that's what we want. I don't have time to go through all the bullet points. I just want to say to Rivers and to Mac and to Brandon, on behalf of RISMedia and Workman Success Systems, thanks so much for being part of our webinar today. Just tremendous value and information. And there's enough here, Brandon, we can unpack and do another webinar just on different pieces of this as we've gone through it. So I appreciate you being so willing to share with everybody. So thank you for being here, and I wish you continued success and have a great rest of this year as we move into the planning for 2022.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Appreciate you. Have a good one, y'all.